my hot take on that is that AI will ultimately make us humans better communicators, because one of the biggest problems that every organization has is communication, right? And you're right. If you're going to get the best out of AI, it will force you to be a better communicator.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the InfoSum podcast, Identity Architects, that spotlights the leaders in the media industry shaping the future of data-driven advertising. I'm your host, Ben Cicchetti, and this week I am joined by the one, the only, the CMO of GumGum, Kerel Cooper. Kerel, welcome to Identity Architects.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Appreciate it. We've known each other for a number of years in the space, and it's finally good to get together and collaborate on some content. So excited for this.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit better, get to know GumGum a little better as well. For anyone who doesn't know you, can you just give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Kerel Cooper, currently CMO at GumGum. I've been in MarTech and AdTech for 26 years or so. I've worked on the publisher side, worked in the AdTech side. So yeah, well versed on operations, account management, product marketing. Born and raised in New Jersey. I'm a Jersey guy here in the States. Still live in Jersey to this day as well, too.
I love that. And one of the most respected CMOs on the industry. So we know we're going to get into a lot of really interesting content here. But we will start the way we always do, which is with our quick fire questions to get to know you a little bit better. Starting with, what's your earliest memory of advertising?
Yeah, so my earliest memory of advertising is probably during the 80s, the 1980s, when I was a kid, watching morning cartoons and seeing cereal and toy commercials. I can remember Frosted Flakes with Tony the Tiger. I can remember I was a big fan of Masters of the Universe,
Yes.
Castle Grayskull ad, and I think those ads really stuck out to me at the time because they were connecting with me, right? Speaking directly to me and my imagination as a child. And so those are the ones that I remember the most.
I love that. You might say they were contextually relevant, but maybe we'll get to that
Yes,
a little bit
yes,
later
yes.
on.
Absolutely.
So if you take yourself back to those days, watching those cartoons, watching Master of the Universe, what did you want to be when you were younger?
Yeah, for me, it was all about sports. I hate to say this now because they just missed the playoffs. They collapsed the New York Mets, which is my baseball team. I
Okay.
wanted to play second base for the Mets, right? And so, and then I think second to that or adjacent to that was wanting to be a sports broadcaster because that was sort of my early introduction to storytelling. And as a marketer, that's super big in our space. And as a successful marketer, the ability to story tell and connect people and their experiences to your product.
I love that. Well, you didn't quite make it to the Mets,
No,
but
no.
what was your first job in either advertising or marketing?
Yeah, so right after I graduated college in 1999, I worked for an internet company called EarthWeb, which focused on providing news and information to IT professionals. My first job was a sales assistant. So basically, taking meeting notes, booking schedules for the VP of sales. And that was my first introduction to the industry. And after about 6 months of doing that, she came to me and said, "Hey, we're launching this new department called ad operations. Would you like to take a shot at it?" And then off went my career.
Interesting. So what do you
Yeah.
think it was about the advertising industry that drew you in? And then what do you think keeps you in it to this very day?
Yeah, I think what drew me in is going back to what I said before about just the ability to tell stories and really dig into people's imagination. And I think today, what keeps me in it is that sort of mix of creativity as well as data. Because if you think about those two things, then really no 2 days are the same in our space, especially as a CMO, and that's what I like, being able to come in and look at different things that are going on either within my org or in the industry that change day by day or week by week and figure out how do we solve those problems.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's definitely what keeps life interesting how much our
Yes.
industry changes. But in your role, you must get to interact with and meet with so many different people at different stages of their career.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you offer to someone that's maybe just starting in their career in media and
Yeah, yeah,
advertising?
definitely. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I'm also an adjunct college professor, so I teach marketing and business classes. And so the advice that I give to people entering our industry is the same advice that I give to people in my class looking for their first job, which is you have to stay curious in our space. Our space evolves so fast, and you have to adapt. The only way to really have truly a long, successful career in our space is to continue learning. The minute you think you are done learning is the minute you will start to fall behind. So that's one piece of advice. The second piece of advice I also always give is you got to build relationships and you have to have a really, really strong network. I tell people all the time, and this goes back to my first job at EarthWeb, been in the industry for 26 plus years. That first job is the only one that I've gotten from filling out a job application and waiting for a call back. Every other job that I've gotten in this industry, I've been helped by a connection, someone that I used to work with, who a client that had a great experience working with me. So it is important to really build your network, and not only build your network, but provide value to your network. It can't always be about you asking for things. You have to provide value to your network.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think it's interesting because people talk about is it what you know or who you know? And I always say it's a bit of both because it is
Yeah.
who you know, but they're only going to put you forward if they know you're good at your job. So it's what you
Yeah,
know at the same
yeah,
time.
and treat people with respect.
Yeah.
There have been so many people in the industry that have been coworkers and then became clients, or were clients and then became, and so you never know when you're going to run into people in this industry, and just treat people with kindness and respect. It goes a long way. Sounds
Yeah.
simple and easy, but it goes a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Two-part question. What
Yes.
keeps you awake at night? So I guess what's the stress factor? And then
Yeah.
what gets you up in the morning? What keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think what keeps me awake at night is making sure that at GumGum we do our best to stay ahead in when it comes to contextual advertising, when it comes to innovation as well. And so always thinking about what's next for the company, what's around the corner. We're about to start. We're recording this at the end of Q3, getting ready for Q4. I'm not only thinking about Q4, but I'm also thinking about planning for next year. So that I would say is what keeps me up at night. And what gets me up in the morning, what gets me going is the opportunity to inspire people, the opportunity to inspire people that I work with, especially folks on my team, but also my two daughters. I have two daughters. One is 17 and the other one is 8. And I want to make sure that I am providing and setting a great example for them. And when they look and see the things that I'm doing, they know that I'm doing the right things.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And this is very relevant then, because the next question is how would you describe what you do within media and advertising to a 10-year-old?
Yeah, I always try as a marketer, I always try to keep things very simple, whether I'm talking to someone in the industry or whether I am talking to a 10-year-old or someone outside of our industry that doesn't know what we do in ad tech and martech. But if I were speaking to a 10-year-old, I would say something to the effect of I help companies talk to people without being annoying. So so the best way to think of it, and again, relating to a 10-year-old, is showing candy ads during a cartoon show, right? Very
Yeah.
relevant, very contextually aligned, and making people feel good. So that's how I try to just keep it very simple.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that. Uh, Final of our quickfire questions, my personal favorite, because it always gives me a unique insight into everyone I get to speak to on this podcast. If there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
Yes, so it has to be a Jay-Z song. Jay-Z
Yes.
is my favorite artist of all time. I think he is the best hip hop artist of all time. One of my favorite songs is from his first album, Reasonable Doubt, Can I Live? And
Mm,
I love that song because if you listen to that song, It's sort of a cinematic, soulful statement on ambition, survival, and identity. And it's a really, really well put together track.
Yeah, great track, great album.
Yep.
Jay-Z, I've seen multiple times in concert here in London, so I'm
There you
completely
go.
aligned with you there. Okay, so on that, let's dig in a little bit deeper.
Yep.
But let's start the conversation with the people who I think should start every conversation, which is the consumer.
Yes.
According to one of your recent studies, nearly 94% of consumers prefer contextually relevant ads over those based on browsing history.
Hmm.
How is GumGum tapping into that demand for more meaningful but privacy aligned advertising?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So first, for those of you who may be listening that aren't familiar with GumGum, we're an ad tech company. We've been around for over 17 years, I think, at this point. And we really focus on contextual advertising and the ability to connect brands with the consumer in contextually relevant environments, right? And so when you think about sort of your question, Ben, around 94 percent prefer contextual over identity based ads. I think what it really comes down to is aligning around mindset and context, right? And so if you think about just sort of basic data that our industry loves to use for targeting, demo data, I would say, right? That I mean, we a lot of us will fall in sort of the same demographics, if you will, right? So males 25 to 40, right? But it shouldn't stop there for humans, right? You could be in those same demos, but you can have wildly different interests, wildly different backgrounds, and be sort of reading different types of content in a different emotional state. And so where we like to look at from a contextual perspective, that is relevant because it's in the moment. It's how someone is thinking and feeling at that particular point in time. And we feel like that's the best time for a brand to engage with a consumer. And
Yeah, I think,
according to the survey, consumers agree.
yeah. Yeah, and look, I have told the story before that there was I won't name them, but there was a walled garden where you could go in and you could look at what you thought they knew about you.
Yep.
And they claimed I was a massive American football fan, and I've never watched a game in my life, never watched the Super Bowl, nothing. But somehow I think I fell into I guess, a group of people or a segment of people they just assumed would be American football fans, but it can be further from the truth.
I have a very similar story. When I was in my early 30s, I had logged into one of those platforms as well and looked at how I was classified, and I was classified as a middle-aged white man. So, you know, a little bit off, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you talked about this shift in targeting from behavioral or demographic data and past behaviors to
Yeah,
capturing mindset in the moment.
yeah.
How does that change the way advertisers think about building those emotional connections with consumers?
Yeah, I think it really changes the way because you are going from looking at a consumer from a targeting perspective to who we think they are and what they might like, because a lot of that information, again, cookies, demographic data, it's all based off of historical information, right? And so moving from that to contextually aligned mindset, which is what do they care about right now in the moment, right? Yesterday, I was here at home and I was reading a lot of sports content. I'm a big Chicago Bears football game. They won. I was reading content about the Bears post their game, right? So I was in a very joyful state, if you will, right? The flip side of that, my baseball team, the New York Mets, collapsed yesterday, didn't make the playoffs. So when I was consuming content about them, I was, high anxiety, not happy, so on and so forth. And if we can, the more the industry moves towards unlocking how people feel in the moment, I think the
Mm.
better off brands will be for connecting with consumers and actually driving results for their campaigns.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense because the other element of this is obviously delivering that relevance isn't just about where you place it, so the
Right.
placement of it. It's about matching the creative to the context, to your
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
So, how do you see brands balancing both to make campaigns resonate more with consumers?
Yeah, you have to do both, right? I think there's a saying in our space that we all know, right? You can set up the best targeting, be on the best well lit website, and put your message in front of that consumer at the right moment at the right time. But if your creative misses the mark, you've done all that for nothing. You've just wasted dollars, right? And so I think when we think about again context and mindset, context really sets, I think, the stage, right? And creative delivers the emotion and connects from a mindset perspective. I often think about it. I'm a big Broadway fan. My wife and I and our family, we go see plays on Broadway, right? And I often think about it as like, okay, when you walk into a theater to see a play before the lights go down and before it starts, you get a glimpse of the stage, right?
Mm.
And that is sort of like the context. It's setting the stage, if you will, right? But you don't emotionally connect with the play until the creativity starts, until the actors come on stage and start doing their thing. So I often kind of like compare it to Broadway shows in many ways.
Yeah. Well, I love a good West End show here in London, so
Yeah.
you got me there.
Yeah.
But that space has evolved so quickly. Contextual advertising and contextual targeting has evolved so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think have been the breakthroughs and the ones that I think of around video, live sports, and CTV that
Yeah.
excite you most? And how do you see other kind of evolving formats like shoppable ads or immersive experiences shaping the future around contextual?
Yeah, I think you just named a great one, which is shoppable ads during live events. I mean, that's huge. Again, when you talk about connecting with people when they are in a specific emotional state, right? There's no better way of doing that than like shoppable ads, right? During live events. I think that that's huge. I think immersive formats in CTV is another big one. And then I think also too, just the ability to measure live events, live sporting events is becoming bigger and bigger. A company that GumGum actually owns called Relo Metrics, they specialize in that, right? So think about when you're watching a live sporting event, um, a soccer match as we call it here, or a football match as you call it there, right? During that match, the players are playing. They've got plenty of logos on
Hmm.
their shirts, right? Maybe there's a Nike logo, right? Relo has the ability to measure how many times that logo was seen on TV, through streaming platforms, and mentioned on social as well too, creating a sort of larger media value for that particular brand, right? So I think those types of metrics during live events are becoming more and more important.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. That ability to understand if you're sponsoring a team or you're placing your logo on a brand, being able to see how many times that content has been surfaced. Because again,
Yeah.
it's not just that one time viewing. We all viewed content so many different ways now. I'm viewing
Yeah.
content through TikTok all consistently. So I'm probably getting exposed to a lot of brands through that aren't necessarily advertising, but
Right.
they are placed there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. A good example from yesterday. The Chicago Bears won the football game on the last play of the game. I watched it live. I then watched a replay a couple of times. I then switched to another channel and watched the replay. I then saw that replay on TikTok. I then saw it on Instagram, right? And so to your point, any of the brands that are seen in that replay, it goes far beyond the live broadcast this day and age, far beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. Obviously, we couldn't have a podcast in 2025 without talking about AI, because AI is transforming everything within the advertising industry and in the way
Even
that
though
we
it's been
work.
here in our space for quite some time. Yeah,
Yeah,
but you're
yeah,
right.
it feels
Yeah.
very fresh. I
Yeah.
keep saying to people, I hope it's not going to be the year of the mobile, where it was just every year is the year of AI. Um, how are you at GumGum applying AI to what you're doing, not just from a product perspective, but also for you and your marketing team and how you operate on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so let me give you the product side and then let me give you the team side. So on the product side, right, when I go back to talking about understanding mindset, our technology has the ability to understand the full context of what a consumer is reading or watching at that particular point in time. And so we use AI to determine, again, how are they feeling in that moment and what's the best ad to deliver, right? So that's on the product side. On the team side, and again, I've been at GumGum now for 14 months as the CMO, and we've been on an AI journey since I've been here. And for us, it's really about how do we get more efficient and effective at what we're doing as a marketing org, right? Because you know just as well as I do, none of us are going to get the approval to hire 10, 15 more people on our team, right? But at the same time, our goals are going to continue to increase and our level of responsibility is going to continue to grow. And the only way teams can manage and be more efficient is you have to figure out how AI fits into your day to day as an organization. And so we use tools like Chat GPT, Perplexity. Our creative team has certain tools that they use. Every part of our organization has different tools that they use. But what I'm most excited about right now is we are at the beginning stages of testing out the use of agents in different areas of our marketing org, right? So, how do we utilize agents to do the first iteration of a product brief, right?
Yeah.
How do we use agents to do the first iteration of a press release or awards submissions, right? Those sorts of things. And my ultimate goal is if we have different agents in different areas of our org, product marketing, sales enablement, demand generation, content marketing, PR, and comms. At some point, I want to be able to have those agents talk to each other and they can come up with sort of like the first draft of our campaign launch for a new product, so on and so forth. Now, I feel very passionate about the fact that humans should continue to play a role at every iteration of what an agent is doing. So there should be that oversight, but that's how we're thinking about the use of agents.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. And I completely agree with you that, what I say to my team all the time is everyone should be kind of playing with AI and getting familiar with it because I
Hmm.
don't believe AI is necessarily going to replace what we do as creative marketers, but it's
Right.
going to make us more efficient. It's going to make us be able to do things quicker. What you do need to do, though, to ensure you don't get replaced, in my opinion, by AI is you need to learn how to prompt AI really, really specifically and
Yes.
really well, because that's how you will then continue to learn and you'll continue to make the most out of AI. Because I think AI can be
Yeah.
such a good augmenter of what we do as
Yeah.
marketers.
I agree. And my hot take on that is that AI will ultimately make us humans better communicators because one of the biggest problems that every organization has is communication, right?
Mm.
And you're right. If you're going to get the best out of AI, it will force you to be a better communicator.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I like that a lot. Um, Today's media is where creativity, commerce, and culture all intersect. How do you envision GumGum's role in helping brands craft stories that naturally fit into cultural moments and ensure what we were just talking about there, the human element isn't lost in all the automation?
Yeah, so for us, again, I think it comes down to context and creativity, right? And because we see so much of what happens across the open web today, from content people are reading, how ads are performing against that content, how brands themselves are performing against that content. I think we sit in a really good place to make recommendations for brands about not only their targeting strategy, but also again the types of creative that should go against that targeting strategy. And everything is, Ben, everything starts with culture, right? Like everything starts there. It was just announced that Bad Bunny is going to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show. That is
Yeah,
a huge cultural moment. That is arguably the biggest music stage globally, right? With
yeah,
with how many people across the globe watch the halftime show, right? So
yeah.
that's going to be something that as we lead up to the Super Bowl, we'll be able to help brands understand okay, how do they be a part of that moment from a digital perspective? Next year, thinking down the line, World Cup is gonna be here, right, across three nations in North America, Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. Another huge global cultural moment where we can provide those insights to help brands again align with their consumer in those right moments.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier, the Super Bowl halftime show is probably the closest I get to watching the Super Bowl. So I'm super excited for
You're
bet building.
not alone with that, right? But everyone tunes into the Super Bowl, but it's that moment,
Yeah.
which is the halftime show, and it is probably, I would say, maybe the only, and if not the only, one of the few sporting events where the halftime show can be just as big, if not bigger, than the game itself.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
Um, let's go on to a topic that we at InfoSum are obviously super passionate about, and that is privacy, because balancing personalization with privacy remains probably one of the industry's biggest and most significant
Hmm.
challenges.
Hmm.
How do you at GumGum think about building consumer trust while driving the effective campaigns that we know we need to deliver for brands?
Yeah, again, I'll go back to what's core about what we do at GumGum, which is contextual. I think contextual is that bridge to driving relevancy without being invasive, right? To a consumer, because we are talking about not personally identifiable information. We are talking about what is someone reading in that particular moment in time, and how do we make sure that the messaging is aligned with what they're reading or very relevant what they're reading. So I think when it comes down, this is quite frankly one of the reasons why I decided to join GumGum over a year ago, because I think contextual not only has still a tremendous role to play in the future of digital advertising, I think it has a tremendous role to play when it comes to privacy and, quite frankly, not being creepy online.
Not being creepy is a good target
Yeah.
for all advertisers, to be fair.
Yes.
You mentioned stepping into that CMO role a little over a year ago. In your time at GumGum, what do you think has been your biggest learning in that kind of initial stretch? And how's it kind of shaping your vision for the future of contextual and the future of GumGum from a marketing perspective?
I think my biggest learning is that contextual is much bigger than just an ad placement, right? If you think about our day-to-day lives as humans and everything that we do in our personal life and in our professional life, it really does boil down to context and relevancy, right? And we all as humans want to focus on what are the most important things to us, right? And so that's, I think, what I've realized is that it does come back to just context. Contextual is bigger than an ad placement, and I don't want to minimize ad placements. Obviously, I'm a marketer in the ad industry, but it goes well beyond an ad placement.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. And I think the space is only going to continue to evolve, especially as we
Yeah.
move into this new AI agentic world that we're all going to be moving into. Um, as I mentioned at the start, you're one of the most respected CMOs in the industry. You're the person that I kind of have looked at for a long time as someone who's doing incredibly interesting work and incredibly good work. But one of the areas I've always respected you for massively is as being a leader on the issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the advertising industry. As an LGBTQ plus leader, I can say that I often feel, or at the moment definitely feel, that like our industry is moving backwards rather than forwards. What's been your experience over the last few years? And what role do you think the advertising industry could and should play in improving the current climate?
Yeah, I would agree. I tend to agree with you, Ben, that I think we have either stalled or we are moving backwards. And if you go back to sort of some of the moments that were happening during the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
We it was a place and it was a time to get really aggressive around DEI and pushing those initiatives forward. And I think that there were a lot of companies and brands who stepped up and wanted to do the right thing and did the right thing and really were genuine about it. But I also think that there's a whole nother side to that of companies who did some things and probably did those things because they thought that it was a trend, or
Mm.
maybe they were forced to do those things in certain way. And now you see those companies rolling back. And I also do think that in some countries, namely mine, the federal government putting pressure on organizations to roll back some of their efforts has been unfortunately a catalyst for that as well too. But, you can look out there and you can see companies who are still pushing forward. And those are the companies that I think, again, are ultimately going to win, because more and more in this day and age, consumers, you, me, others, we are choosing to spend our dollars with brands and organizations who not only supply us with great products, but also align with our own values and our own beliefs. And, the more companies can understand that these types of efforts are not only a good thing to do, or the right thing to do, but they also make business sense, right? I mean, look, we are about to have a Latin performer at the biggest stage in music, right, throughout the world, right? Like, and part of the reason for that, as I have to think, is because the Hispanic population, their spending power continues to grow and grow and grow. The NFL is not having Bad Bunny at the halftime show because they think it's a nice thing to do. They understand the business behind it as well. You can best
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think it's interesting to what you were saying is I've never seen a single statistic or report that stated that supporting DNI and supporting different groups was bad for your business. I've seen tons of reports and stats that prove that it's good for your business.
Absolutely.
Uh, so I completely agree with you. Kerel, this has been fantastic because for
Yeah.
me, the joy of this podcast is that I get to meet so many incredible people like yourself who are pioneering new ways to innovate in our industry and deliver those better customer experiences that we know consumers look for. So, when you look to people that you admire in the industry, who would you nominate for me to interview on an upcoming episode of Identity Architects?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are so many fantastic people in our space, but one person who comes to top of mind, he's a marketer himself, Dr. Marcus Collins. He recently wrote a book called For the Culture. He's a cultural strategist. He is a professor, and he is a great brand storyteller. And so, if anyone doesn't know who Dr. Marcus Collins is, look him up on LinkedIn. Check out his book For the Culture as well. But I think, Ben, he would be a great interview for you.
I love that. Well, we will definitely reach out and try and get him on the podcast because I agree. I think that'd be a fascinating conversation. Kerel, thank you so much for being on Identity Architects. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. I feel like it
Same.
should have happened sooner, but
Yeah.
this was exactly the right time and a super interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being on Identity Architects with me today.
Thank you for having me on. Great conversation, and good luck with the podcast moving forward, Ben.